when I had people working on a courageous idea, they would stay later, they would be happier, and it would also work. And every time I had someone working on the client picked the safe idea, they would couldn't wait till 5 p.m. showed up. It didn't work as well, and I had pissed off people. When I had people working on a courageous idea, they would stay later, they would be happier, and it would also work. And every time I had someone working on the client picked the safe idea, they would couldn't wait till 5 p.m. showed up. It didn't work as well, and I had pissed off people.
What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow Chart podcast with your boys, Matt Wolf and Joe Fear.
Mr. Berman, we're live. It's great to have you here. How are you?
Wait, we're live?
I mean,
not.
Are we on Facebook Live? You guys did not tell me we were
Didn't
live.
warn you. I don't know. I feel more important with this show when I say we're live.
He likes to think we're broadcasting over Sirius XM or something.
One day. Don't we?
It's like I'm in my Zoom garb, not wearing pants, guys. I did not know we were live.
But the state has opened up, my friend. You can now wander with pants on. But why would you? It's hot outside.
By the way, why if we're open, 85% are still wearing masks? Have you noticed that?
I have been out very little. I did go to the zoo yesterday, and there were not a lot of masks there. I will warn you there. So
the animals don't have to wear masks.
That's
the people. Right?
The orangutan was a little confused. He was still wearing his homemade one. But, yeah.
The real test will be tonight's Padre game, which is they're calling it the home opener, even though it's halfway through the season already. They're calling it the home opener because they're filling the crowds, right? It's going to be full capacity. So that'll be the real test to see how scared people are right now.
True that.
I thought they were calling it the home opener because they lost 7 in a row. Or whatever.
Yeah.
We've been starting to talk about Padres a lot more in this podcast.
Yeah. It's not the Padres podcast, but it does come up a lot because it's something that we tend to be passionate about.
My God, yeah. All right, so you and I, we met in a local mastermind here. I think it's very, very creatively named the San Diego Mastermind, I think it is. So, but by your brother, not a brother, Eric Berman. Definitely had that confused for multiple sessions, and you're like, bro, we're not related. But
yeah, every time you mention the names, I just assume that. For the longest time, I assumed you guys were brothers because aren't you both in the You're both in the same mastermind.
Same
right?
mastermind. Yeah. And again, there's the theme of today, right? Hey, branding's about getting clear, and we're confusing everyone. And I'm like, yeah, he's my brother. We're brothers.
It's fine. Let him think it.
Yeah, man. But we talked for so long, and it's really cool to have your experience in that mastermind and your perspective. You've helped us out on the Pod Hacker side of things, our new brand. So thank you for that. And but you have this branding, you come with a different perspective than a lot of the marketers in this mastermind. You're always like, hey, I'm the branding guy over here. Which I'm like, I like that. Because I feel like that's where my heart always kind of was and is. But then, some of this nerdy marketing stuff kind of gets in the mix, and that's helpful too, right?
Yeah, it's why it works though, I think the first time we met, the very first one I was at, I'm like, guys, I am not a funnel guy. I'm a funner guy. We came up with Funner California. That's what we do. And I think, look, maybe this is a good kickoff point. We're living in this media obese time right now, right? Where we're inundated with, I think it's 7,000 messages a day.
Yeah.
And the problem is when we work on the little. Our 8 to 12 hours a day, we aren't thinking contextually. We aren't thinking about what happens when you drop this idea in with the rest of the world. We just assume, well, of course you're going to see it, right? It's so important. I've been working on this forever. Right. And the world could give a shit how long you've worked on something. They just see it or they don't. And so there's so much competition right now. It's why brand is so important.
Well, dude, you said funner, and before I knew you, I was seeing the billboards all around San Diego.
The videos with David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, Hasselhoff has been in there.
We call him Mayor Hoff, is what we call him.
Oh, the mayor, gotcha.
I mean, that guy, man, his name still comes up. It's insane. But yeah, these billboards are still burned in my mind, and that was you.
That was our team.
Man.
That was our team. There's a full team behind it, and. By the way, so I got to give props. So Austin Lane, a guy named Skojo, were the rock stars that really came up with Funner, and you talk about what am I really? I really see myself as like a creative business guy. Like I think most business people probably under index on creativity. They don't really understand what creativity can do for your business. And I think sadly most creatives really don't understand business or really the impact that they have to the bottom line. And you guys know this, like without emotion, you're not moving anyone. There's no behavior change. I always like to say no feel, no deal. And so funner was like, you just can't help but smile when you see that work. And like what is this? Is that a word? And we're like, we always say it's not a word, it's a place. Right. And so that's the beauty of Funner, California.
It's like a place in your mind, like as a kid. Like I just remember, I'm like, yeah, my dad, I'm like, that's not a word. I'm like, but as a kid, I'm like, it's funner over here, man.
Well, it's also
like,
a place up in Paula, California. It's a Harris,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. Now it is a place. It's an actual place.
Funner, California.
There you go.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, you're getting things seen. It's memorable. It's a place. You're creating all these kind of, you just have a different perspective, it seems like, when you approach things. And you said team, you're very much of a team, a collaborative kind of guy. I know you're working on some projects right now that you can speak about maybe if you want to, but like it's not the Eric Berman show, but you're collaborating on someone else's vision, but it's like also this thing of the heart from you, It feels like that's like wrapped in everything you do.
Matt, did you just call me Eric Berman? He did, right?
Did I? I might
Did I say Eric Berman? No freaking way I said that.
Yeah, you did. This is first
did
of all,
I really?
You did. And now this is the part where you have to now do the you gotta, like, go back and be like, I'm like,
if I did,
shit.
I deserve a slap.
And now we're back live.
There you
go. Yeah, to me, look, I'm 45 years old. Like, I'm not perfect. Someone once said it takes you 40 years to figure out who you are, and the next 40 to be that person. I haven't always been team. There's definitely been times in my career where, like, I think I'm talented. I want a shot. I want to get an opportunity. I want to be seen. And now it's like, it's like I always want what's best, like the best work. I just think the best work works. And so when you run into talented people like that team that I mentioned, it's like you got to give them love. You want people to know, like, this wasn't the Ryan Berman show, not the Eric Berman show, the Ryan Berman show. It was,
damn it.
There's other people and you want to empower their ideas too. And I will say this, what a surprise when your company's called Courageous. Like, one of the first things out of my mouth always is courageous ideas are the only ones that matter. And, again, if it's not a courageous idea, you're gonna run into problems. And where that came from, honestly, was just like looking at our own team. And I'm like, wow, when I had people working on a courageous idea, they would stay later, they would be happier, and it would also work. And every time I had someone working on, like, well, the client picked the safe idea, they couldn't wait till 5 p.m. showed up. Right? It didn't work as well, and I had pissed off people. And so even with my first book, Return on Courage, it kind of came from that premise that, wait a minute, why is it that what is everybody really afraid of with the courageous idea? And also, like, wow, I'm wasting a lot of time. Like, we would present 3 ideas to clients. We knew what we were doing. Like, we'd have like the safe idea. It's like walking the plank, like the safe idea, the middle, and then okay.
Yeah.
And anytime we had a client like pacing with sweaty palms, we're like, that's the one you want to buy.
Interesting. Can you could you tell that during the conversation? Like, okay, they're getting a little antsy here.
Yeah, and I think the courage on our side, on the service side, is to acknowledge that. Right? So there's so many things that has to go right to get a courageous idea out in the world. Like, somehow someone has to think of it. Then everybody has to get egos out of the way because everyone wants to touch it. And like 1%, and it's like, well, now it's not as good. Then the client has to actually see it. And then they're like, oh shit, can I present this to the CEO? Am I going to get fired if I? Then you got to pick the right execution partner to actually bring it to life. So like, there's so many places where a courageous idea, just the little things, can die. It's not as good. And so the minute you can be honest with your client and be like, all right, this is the one you want. And look, what's the stuff that you love? What's the stuff that you remember? Right.
Yeah.
It's not the first time you see an ad. Like, when you see an ad the 9th time, if you're actually still acknowledging it, like when Michael B. Jordan plays Alexa and it's the ninth time you've seen it and you're still smiling, you're like, yeah, that was probably an ad when someone was pacing in a room, not sure if that's the one they should go with.
Well, the Funner California ad that we spent the first 5 minutes talking about on this episode. I mean, how old of an idea is that? When was the genesis of that?
Yeah, I'd say so. Again, if you strategically follow how we got there, it's pretty cool to see. We always. So first what happened was so we're talking about Harrah's. We're talking about Harrah's, Southern California.
Casino.
And the casino. And they were about, I'd say now it's probably 7 years. Wow. 7-8 years ago, they received what's called resort status. Okay. So now they could rebrand as Harrah's Resort, not just casino. Yeah. So the new news back then is, hey, lazy river. Swim up bar, right? This is I want to go there.
Yeah.
Our strategy was Palm Vegas.
Palm Vegas.
Between, right. It was like Palm Springs meets Las Vegas, right? It was right between L.A. and Vegas, and so that was like, well, how do we actually? And you guys know this. We're lazy in San Diego. We don't like to do things.
I'm wearing sandals right now.
I'm not wearing shoes at all.
I love that we've had no pants, no shoes. Okay.
It's true.
So, how do you actually make a lazy group of people drive 50 minutes? It's like
to a pool. Like they probably already have a pool in their backyard, so it's like
right. The ocean's right there. Well, and so that's not an easy thing to short circuit somebody and create that much desirability that they want to go. So the first few years, it's like, okay, resort. The actual line was your first resort for fun. So instead of the last resort, this is your first resort. And obviously we met the double entendre and we launched your first resort for fun. And you might remember we launched Dive Day Club on Saturdays.
Yeah.
So we made it like bring out the pool party, make it desirable, make it cool. And so the whole first part of the campaign, it's like, we can't jump directly to funner. Let's just start to establish fun. As a destination, as a resort. And as that started to work, the second part of the campaign was like, wait a minute, we've always said it's a destination. Well, let's make it a real city. And Funner itself, it's the actual property because it's on native land. You have some different rules that you can play by. So we could legally change the property boundaries to Funner, California.
No kidding. So I didn't know that.
Does it have like its own zip code and everything?
You know what? I don't know if it has its own zip code. I think it does. I really do. I could be getting this wrong, but that's why we could do it. When you Google Funner, California, it pops up. We have those green signs that say like Funner, 11 miles.
Dude,
Funner,
literally a weather report in Funner, California.
I just put in Funner CA in Google and it kicked out what's the weather like Funner California weather mayor map commercial. Wait, what?
That's why I said Mayor Hoff, because if you're gonna have a city, you need a mayor. And so Mayor Hoff, of course, he set the first rule. Gives out keys to the city, and now they're on to Mayor
Rob
Riggle.
Riggle. Yeah, that's what he says, Rob Riggle. That's funny.
So it's and by the way, when you go back to, not only has it worked for the business, but like think about like if you work there, like the attrition's lower because people are like, yeah, how awesome is it that you get to work for Funner, and then what it also does is. You know what isn't Funner? A pit boss with his arms crossed trying to take your money. So like then you have to think about how does Funner come to life in all the different touch points. And to me, that is brand, right? If we say the decision making is very easy. If it's Funner, you do it. If it isn't, you don't. And so you go to a casino and a guy's in a suit and you feel like, well, that's not fun. Well, what are we wearing? Let's talk about the uniform that you should be wearing. Maybe it's like Hawaiian shirts. Maybe it's something different. Let's think about it like boroughs in a city. So this is all the stuff that goes into brand and like imagining like a whole universe.
I'm so curious about like what the brainstorming sessions look like at your place, or like I'm sure it's huge. But can you walk us through kind of some of the, I don't know, just how you do this, or the constraints you look at, the perspectives? It looks like you're kind of like flipping common perspectives that you see. How does that look?
I think that's what it is. You again, first of all, you have to. I'm on the other side of it's sad because one of my good friends said it like that everybody's creative. And I think that's almost like everybody gets a trophy. And so I don't disagree that we all should be able to wonder, but like there's a definite craft. It's a muscle that's built over time where creativity like really flourishes from. And it's not creative for the sake of creativity. It's strategic, creative business ideas.
Yeah.
And so that's how we're looking at this. And so when you think about the branding and the creative process, it always starts with what we call a strategic brief. And it's just like what it sounds. It's short and strategic. And then off of that, hopefully there's an insight there that we can run with. So for Funner, California, right, it's a destination. Well, if it's a destination, maybe it's a real city. And that's one place we explore. And then down the rabbit hole you go. Again, a lot of this comes down to just pure trust with your client too, and do they know you have their best intentions? And again, go back to behavior change. So that's really what it is. There's a strategy component to what we do. There's an ideation component to what we do, and then there's an execution component to what we do. And they're all very, very different parts of the process. I'm sure there's been great ideas we'll never know about because the execution was so shitty that it's just like, oh, well, that could have been a funny idea, but the money wasn't there, or they didn't get, like, they casted it wrong, or the language is wrong, or they tried to say everything at once. And I think it's like that's where the discipline with creativity really comes in, and like what works on you and how do I just get you to the next part of the story. And I think that's the beauty of marketing today is there's so many places where you could tell your story. Maybe you tell the first inning of your story, since we talked about baseball already. The first inning, it could be a content piece on YouTube, trying to get somebody to laugh on social. But then you drive them into an experience. They pass go if they want to learn more. And then what's the next part of the experience in the next video or the next maybe website? That's the beauty of marketing today. And I think brand lives in all those arenas.
Now with your idea phase, is that like you get a bunch of people into a room and there's no bad ideas, just throw everything at the whiteboard? Or is it a collaborative process, or are people kind of individually going off, coming up with ideas and then bringing them to the table? What does that look like?
I'm more of the mindset that committees, like brainstorms, nobody commits in those committees. So I like little teams working separately and then coming back and sharing. So the brainstorm might be go away 3 teams, then come back and let's start putting stuff on the wall. And then, okay, what do we think? We like this idea. We like this. What do we like about this idea? We're not there yet. So there's almost like maybe a vetting or a massaging. And in our business, there's creative directors that are really good at like taking a B- idea and turning it into a B+, or an A- idea and turning it into an A, which is really hard to do. Taking a C idea and making it into a B is not so bad. No, it's not. That's not that hard. But when you have like you're onto something, and knowing when you're onto something, or like, hey, you know what? I don't think you're there. Like, go back to the drawing board or keep pushing in this arena. That's actually somebody's job as a creative director to think through that.
That's interesting. Is there much input from, and I'm sure it's client by client basis, but with who you're working with, obviously, like you said, you kind of know like the spectrum of what you're able to do with them. But do you like input from a client or an outside source like that, or is it like
it just depends? It just depends, and it depends on the assignment. I'm working right now on. I'll give you a few examples. I'm working with Johnson & Johnson on it's a diversity, equity, inclusion program for in-house. This is the opposite of Funner, right? For the outside world, it's like, hey, like they want to be better as an organization, right? You've got a lot of people that, again, I think this is not just J&J. It's like there's this ivory tower syndrome for white privilege that exists. It's just real. It might not even be your fault. Like, look, we live in San Diego. I live in Encinitas. I'm like, I live in a bubble in a bubble in a bubble. Like,
super bubbly? I mean, we all do. Yeah.
Like, we're so far away from reality for certain people. And so when you're in the empathy business, how do you actually start to like help people step into the shoes of somebody very different than them? And I think that's really, again, we're back to like the goal of the exercise is you create stories that genuinely land, that just for a second help you escape your life and see what the life looks like through the eyes of somebody else. And I think that's where compassion comes from. And again, we're still back to like, did you make somebody move? Like, did they actually feel different or feel something from the work that they saw? So in a case like that, it's more like, hey, here are the stories we want to tell. Here's how they work together, right? So like, just like almost like a Netflix arc.
Yeah.
Right. If we're telling this story with our first one, Well, we just told that story, so how do we build on that? Now
That's what
let's
it
tell a
seems
different,
like. Yeah.
yeah, different note in 2 and 3. So at this point, it's less looking for them to be part of the creative process, and they're keeping us very honest on like, well, in our organization, be careful of X, Y, and Z, or oh, we love this story. Is there something here? Like they did bring forward an idea. I'm like, this is great. Yeah, let's turn this into a video. So again, it just depends on the client.
How would you go about like uncovering a story or creating a story for a company that has like a seemingly pretty boring background? You know, like a lot of company stories like aren't that exciting, but you know, with some branding and some marketing, you could create some exciting stories. So I'm curious, you know, what sort of processes do you go through to kind of uncover where these stories lie?
So I'm gonna do this the way I would do it. So I'm gonna tell a story about uncovering stories.
Got it. Let's do it.
And so so for my book, I was down to 2 final titles. I ended up with Return on Courage because I actually felt the problem was showcase, like if I'm a leader and I'm busy, that I have to as fast as possible showcase the return. What's the business win by being courageous, right? ROC is how you maximize your ROI, return on courage. But the other title that I loved, but I felt it was too narrow, was Willing Courage Brands. So courage brands, you know, that's like what we do. We think every brand on the planet is somewhere between a coward brand and a courage brand, and we let them know that in the first 10 minutes. Like, where do you think you are in the spectrum? Are you a coward brand, a stasis brand, an iterative brand, an aspirational brand, or a courage brand? And like you talk about therapy out of the gate, like it's crickets. And then usually someone's like, well, I don't know how everybody else feels, but we used to be this and now we're that, which is why our phone rang in the first place. So what I loved about Willing Courage Brands is the word willing and the double meaning of it. And, you know, first that means you have a leader that's actually open-minded to hearing somebody else's perspective. And I'm actually willing to hear someone else's take on this. And then once you decide on a direction, the grit and the will that it takes to see something through, like we're going to will this to be successful. Like we know we have an idea here. And one of my favorite quotes is all truth passes through 3 phases. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's wildly opposed. Third, it's deemed self-evident, right?
Yeah. That's
And
true.
that's what happens when you put a courageous idea into the world is like at first there's pushback. And then second, there's little quiet conversations in Reddit. And then third's like, well, anybody could have come up with Google.
Right.
It's like what? So I think it starts with a leader that is willing to address change. And you have to start by looking at, well, why have you been so boring for so long? Who's causing that? Is it the product or the people deciding on the marketing? And that is a hard pill for most to swallow. Right? Because like, wait, you know, what works at you at, like, and I'll say this all the time. I'm like, what works on you at home? That's called marketing,
Yeah.
right? But when you get to work, you're wearing khakis and a button down, and something went away, and now you've got your professional you, and you're making sure your data. I'm like, well, why did you watch that Netflix show? Why did you go to Great Wolf Lodge, or why did you go to Disney? What did you see? What emotion happened in your mind? And so that's not off limits to any business or brand on the planet. You know, I mean, look, insurance, the most boring category, has a duck, an ostrich. I mean, like a lemur,
gecko.
whatever it is,
Yeah,
a gecko.
That's true.
You know, like, so if insurance can be somewhat entertaining, this is the problem. You could take a boring category. In fact, please give me a willing leader in a commodity, boring category where that is where the white space is. It's just having the courage to actually follow the trail and not being afraid that the board's going to come down on you or your boss is going to come down on you. And to me, that's where the opportunities are. If you brought another animal into insurance, we've seen that at this point, right?
Well, and this goes back to empathy as well. It's kind of, you know, you said running an empathy business. Like now you're totally you're taking the ego out of it. You're probably looking at, well, you are looking at other people's, you know, the way they're looking at the world, but really look at yourself, like you just said, outside of your business. If you feel like your story is not creative or just catching the attention of everyone, that there is white space potentially had for you, to capture. But I feel like that empathy piece you mentioned, before your question is everything in branding here and obviously courage.
Our second value is magic. That's like we have our core values. And it's like magic is such a perfect sort of for us, because it's like when you see magic in creative, you're like, do it again. Make me laugh again. I want us to do it again. But the behind the scenes, the magician knows it's a trick. Like the magician has been prepared to like do the craft to create a response.
Yeah.
But you feel the magic and you want to see it again and again and again. And I think that's what great storytelling is all about. And again, I'm afraid to even say great marketing, because I don't want someone to confuse that your marketing should be boring. There's a way to tell the story in a way that has the magic that moves people.
I mean, I think it's just as power. When you say you're not a marketing guy, at least in the mastermind, we're just joking around. But it's like, man, this is like so smart marketing, because it's memorable. It's these little things here and there stick out to. I mean, the funner thing. That was way before I ever knew you, and that was just random things that stuck out in both of our minds. And who knows how many millions of people in San Diego. And it was just an idea, it's thought up in a room by a group of folks and actually acted upon. And it's interesting, but that's marketing in a nutshell. And you just like created a whole thing that doesn't exist in someone's mind, and now you placed it there for whatever to happen, any kind of thing afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, again, and if you're a CEO, there's actually one of the comments that have come up in LinkedIn and in a lot of marketing forums is like, if your CEO doesn't understand marketing, get out. Because it's now you're educating up on the CEO. If you're a CEO, though, again, we're back to willing. If you're willing to like see it differently, and you're like, you know what, I really don't understand this next generation and the amount of content they're consuming and the places that they're consuming it. That's where I think marketing can win. And I think the mistake that many make, and we haven't talked about this much quite yet, is that if you look at marketing as, hey, go get us customers, and that's all they are, then you've also missed that they're supposed to be the eyes and ears of your customer, and they should be reporting back in, and you should be pivoting off of what they're learning. My fear is that, bad relationships at companies start with transactional relationships between C-suites and marketers. And it's like, just go get us a client. Yeah. Go tell our story. And it's like, well, hold on. Are you open to hearing what's actually being said? Like, I'm actually on the ground with the consumer. I can report back to you on what I'm hearing. It's a two-way street. That's when you know you have a good relationship.
Well, I was going to ask, when it comes to branding, and let's say a company's just starting out, they're just kind of getting off the ground, what are like the first elements you would tell them to focus on? I know you've helped us with some of the pod hacker stuff that we've created. Like, what are some of the like initial things? Like, it could be like real basics, like the logos and the imagery and stuff. Like, where do you put the focus first when you're starting to create the brand in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's so hard because you want to jump right to execution, but I would keep it so strategic. I would keep it like high level strategy. Like, for one, like what we already talked about, like start by stepping into the shoes of the people that need what you have. What are they consuming? What aisles are they walking down? Right? Like just reverse engineer it. If you have to take your shoes off and put them on the wall, do it. Take your wife's shoes, take your husband, whatever. To put other shoes on the wall and start walking down those shoes. And that is the hardest. Like, it's so hard for us to get out of our own way and contextually think about it from somebody else. And then comes the next hard part is like, well, is this actually the customer we want in 3 years from now? What do those shoes look like?
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
Roadmap.
Right? Right? So you have to be, again, all you're doing is trying to stay wide enough on your idea that there's multiple revenue streams that you could look at. And then from there, I believe marketing is only an exercise of two things: clarity and controlling the price point. So how fast are people getting what you do? Is it clear? If you think I'm Eric Berman, I haven't done a good job marketing myself.
I got to check that.
Right.
What happened?
And then, so that's it. Like, this is why I think URLs are so important. Website domains are so important. Like, in a second, Does it say who you are? Can you do it in a cool way? I'll tell you one of the side projects I'm working on. It's not the one you think. We can get to that too if you want.
Sure.
So my son and I are working on a kid's book, and
Very
I
cool.
think I want to turn it into a TV series. So where I always start, I had the idea, and then I'm like, is this a good idea?
Uh-huh.
And I didn't see it anywhere. And then I'm like, okay, if the URL is available, I'm moving forward. And then it's like the moment of truth as I go to
Yep.
Network Solutions and like
Yep.
put it in. And so the idea is called Opposite Town. And so oppositetown.com is what I bought.
So it was
And
available. Good.
It was available.
Yeah.
And the idea is Unwelcome to Opposite Town will be the first book because obviously in Opposite Town, the opposite happens.
Uh-huh.
So you're born old and you die young. So you can imagine like Benjamin Button,
Yeah.
right? Like baggy clothes but old. You got to be 61 years old to drive a car,
Mhm.
right? It's gotta be fun. You got to be this short to ride this ride.
Oh,
Cats
yeah.
chase the dogs, mice chase the cats. On the moral side of the story, I think in life often the opposite happens, and you're
We
better
mentioned
off.
that earlier. Yeah, with ideas as well.
Yeah, so that's an example. It's like okay, opposite town. Like it's succinct. I can remember it. You're right. If you go to oppositetown.com right now, nothing is there. Okay, but like you get it. You get it in a second. I don't need to show you a picture. It's memorable enough. And then the next part is again controlling the price point. So how fast can you hold value on different things? And I think this is so hard for clients to see. It's just like discount it, discount it, discount it. I'm like
Right.
you're killing your value. Like brand is about trust, and if you have a brand that people trust, they're willing to pay for it. So I think again, it's just those two things: time, clarity.
Time and clarity. So on the price point, I mean, yeah, discounts. I mean, that's almost like the easy way to do something there. You know, be it a promotion or just staying relevant or whatever it is. Do you have some principles that you like to keep your clients, or at least that you kind of guide people on the pricing side of things?
Yeah. Again, I think it's a tricky arena, right? Because if you have a really good product, there are times when you want to make sure people try you out. And we already discussed how hard it is to short circuit somebody in their behavior into trying something new, right? So you got to figure out that balance. Number one thing always is word of mouth, right? So how do you figure out a way to, if you've got a genuine product, it's a legitimate, you've got a great event that you're throwing, right? Okay, if I tell you about two events you've never heard about, let's do this right now. So
Yeah.
we're throwing Beer Fest, and we're throwing Craft Fest. Okay, Beer Fest and Craft Fest. They're the same weekend. Beer Fest, it's $99, all you can drink, from 1 to 4 p.m. Craft Fest, it's $2.99, but like barrels of brown drinks, and they're gonna also pick you up and drop you off. Okay, that's all you know.
Yep.
Which one you going with?
I'm going craft.
I'd probably say I'd go the first one.
I like it.
Again, there's no right or wrong, right? But
Yeah.
let's say it was the $2.99 one. Let's say it was Craft Fest, and I'm like, hey, just today we're gonna cut that price to $2.40. Okay, there's margin there without really messing up your brand. At $99, it's like the day shows up, it's like $20, Beer Fest.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm in with you probably at $20.
For sure. Yeah.
Right? But like again, I think that this is where people get it wrong, and I think the hopeful takeaway is that price point is nothing more than a brand validator.
Yeah.
Right? You
It's
run
got to be
into-
in that connection. It can't stand alone, right? It's got to go in conjunction with the clarity of the brand itself, what the
Correct.
mission is. Yeah,
Have you guys bought anything like a brand you've never heard of before on Amazon? I'm asking.
definitely.
Quite,
Oh, yeah.
quite frequently, actually.
But
right?
but not. I would say there's a price point attached to it, like you just said. Like it's like
Right.
okay, under like a $30 threshold. It's like
yeah,
No
right.
problem. Right?
Yeah.
Because if worst case scenario breaks on you in the first week, you're like, well, that's what I get for paying.
exactly.
Well, usually it's like
$20.
commodity type products, right? Like if I'm going to go buy
Yeah.
a spatula, for instance, I'm not worried about brand. Yeah.
Right. I just bought. Have you guys like got into the whole pickleball craze? That's
oh,
happening?
dude, I have.
Okay,
yeah.
me too.
I've fallen out of it since then. That was like a year, but it's amazing. Yeah.
I'm in it right now, and I bought
It's
my
good.
pickleball paddle on Amazon, and you know how I made my decision? Price.
It just price. Okay.
I'm like, well, this must be a good paddle. It's $60.
60, from what I know about pickleball, it's pretty good. It's
Pretty
decent,
good,
you know?
right?
It's good to start out with. Yeah.
29, 19. So again, the exercise here is connecting that. Again, if you never get it for the whole first impression, you can never get another chance to make a first impression. That they're going to judge you on how you price it.
And then you have Amazon, that's basically all pushing the price and price only. So it's kind of I wonder how that plays into the whole thing of other brands actually trying to create a brand. And then you have, Amazon over here that's just getting the price as low as possible.
Well, and then you
ideally.
have Amazon Basics, who's attaching their brand to all those commodity type products. And then
Right.
people go,
Absolutely.
well, I know Amazon's brand. I don't know that other brand. And Amazon's charging the same price. I'll go with Amazon's brand. Yeah.
And there lies the challenge. And so again, it just depends on where you are in the journey, right? And how price plays, how clear are you? And again, the dinosaur brain in all of us, you don't have to tell the whole story. Like, how do you just get to the next part of the story?
Well, that's what it sounds like. And going back to how everything's kind of connected, like when you were talking about the whole funner ideation and how that came to be, it wasn't like it was just funner. You had almost like these stair-step approach into things. And I'm sure that happens.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if we would have put on a billboard? We show it's Hoff, but then we have like the price, and then we have like the 18 things you could do. Like, you wouldn't pay attention to it.
I would have like that must be a joke. That's not real. Someone just had a lot of cash they threw on a billboard, and
So maybe the last point on this is the discipline as a leader. It doesn't matter if it's a new company. The discipline to not populate a billboard or your marketing. Like, be really, really thoughtful and disciplined on not trying to say too much and lead with the big stuff, and know then how to drive people to your website where maybe the next part might be, and from the web, or maybe it's social media or whatnot. It's just recognizing that it's an ecosystem. They all play together. They all work together.
Is there a, like with direct response, there's a lot totally different, angle of how that's approached and copy. Like, is there kind of like a happy blend that you've figured out, or?
Well, on the same point of what you're saying, there's actually a quote on that I actually wrote down on my notes here that you put on your blog that I really liked. That it was, I don't know if this is a word for word quote, but it was something to the effect of the best advertising is no longer recognized as advertising. It's now called content. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is like the sort of blend between like direct response marketing and branding, and how does that all blend together? So yeah, do you want to speak into that for a minute? Like, what do you mean by that?
You have some killer content, man. So I'll just give you a couple things. Is just your website itself. It's like this guy has this unique experience. Plus, you have this video that I won't say what but it's just like
the CourageBrands.com website is badass. Like, it's just everybody needs to go to that site and just see what's there.
Yeah, again, I find it fascinating when agencies say that they're going to help you differentiate, and then everyone's website looks the same.
100%. Yeah.
It's like, come on. So look, I just think we're back to context. Like, just really, really think about how you're going to differentiate yourself. I didn't come up with this line. I love it. It's a woman named Sally Hogshead. She says, different is better than better. And I think, in terms of like, how do you unlock something in someone's brain? Like, if everything you need, everything you think you need is in your brain, like food, right? Sushi. When I say sushi, what's the first restaurant you think of for you?
Taboo.
That Taboo is the first one that came to mind for me, because I was
Place
there
down
2
the
days
street.
ago.
Oh, there you go.
So like, you're like, when I want that, I'm going there. Okay. How do I knock that off your brain? That's what we're talking about. When I say pickleball shoes, okay, that doesn't exist. When I say running shoes,
Sure. Asics.
how do I
New
knock that
Balance
off
for
your
me.
brain?
Yeah.
How do I knock that off your brain? Why does that work for you? I mean, we're cavemen and cavewomen. It's usually like New Balance for me always used to be like, well, because of widths. Right? They're all like great fit.
That's right.
Asics Tiger sounds cool.
Yeah.
That's what we're competing with.
Right.
And so you have to knock this shit off somebody's brain. And I'll tell you guys this too. Like, the reason I even went and wrote my book in the first place, we would have clients, marketers, come down to our office. They would see we were prepared. They would see we'd have the storytelling. But when they would have to go back to their CEOs in other cities and sell us, I called it the golf course conversation.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, wait a minute, you want to use a company in San Diego that I've never heard of before? So I actually think you have to be better. I don't think you can be even. If we were in New York or San Francisco, LA, you can be even because you again, you're using the brand, you're leveraging the equity of New York, of LA. That's a brand too, right? That plays into this. So I'm like, wait, I have to be better. I can't be even. All right, now I got to go write a book. I got to go write blog posts. I got to write videos. I got to go buy a 10 by 10 step and repeat for my house, right? And so I think it's being thoughtful and mindful of like when you interact with the potential decision maker on day one. Decision maker, by the way, is customer.
Mm-hmm.
And right, there's only two ways it goes. They look at you and they say yes, or they look at you and they say no. I can tell you, I don't ever, and I'm sure I'm not for them either. I already know that I'll never buy a Kia. Right? They've dissuaded me.
Was there one thing, or was it a series of events?
Because I never saw myself as a hamster.
Yeah,
good point. All right.
Okay, so they spent their money to remind me that they're not for me. Okay, just like Courageous. When your company is called Courageous, I do hope that we turn off the 60 to 70% of business that doesn't want to be courageous. They don't get it. They don't see the value in it. It saves my time. It saves my team time. But the 30 to 40% that's curious, that's like, we know we need to change. We know we need to do something. That's when I want my phone to ring, when there's genuine willingness on both sides.
Yeah.
And dude, what better way to start off any conversation as courageous being it's in your signature, it's in your emails, it's in every possible thing I'm sure that you touch. I mean, you have Courage Boot Camp behind you right now in the step and repeat. So it's like you're immediately weeding away most of the people for good, for everyone's benefit.
Absolutely. And again, and what it's also done is it's brought a wide range of work and
sure,
from this week I was honestly like, it's not just marketing. I'm coaching executive teams on how to be more courageous and have hard conversations. And I never thought I'd be in the coaching space. Monday I fly to Idaho to go give a keynote, and then we're rolling up our sleeves and we're helping J&J. We're helping Kraft Heinz right now with some courageous storytelling. So nice. I like the different. I like that it's not. It's like where's courage needed, and how can we help you apply it? And maybe that's the secret. Like maybe life is very simply, how do you get compensated to do the things you love the most? And for me, that's what I'm attempting to design.
Yeah. I actually want to dive into that, what you just said there, a little bit more in a minute. But before we do, I actually want to ask what are some brands that you see as being like really courageous brands? Like, what are some examples of like that company did something bold as hell and it paid off big for them?
Yeah, I always talk about Domino's, and it's a weird one to bring up, and which is why I bring it up, right? You've got a Midwest company that has 30,000 employees, right? Like it's easy to think about garage brands.
Sure.
Like, like everyone in a hooded sweatshirt with 7 of you, popcorn everywhere. But I love the fact that this was not a small company. And, about a decade ago, they had the courage to change everything from the crust up. And they really did. They changed the cheese, the sauce, the dough. Now they had the resources to do it. And then the courageous piece was not only did they get their product right, which, by the way, should be another part of this brand conversation. How about make a good product? Let's start
there.
Yeah, let's start there. But off of that, then it comes to they basically spent money on national television during the NFL playoffs to tell America their pizza sucked, and they showed all the ways. Like they showed focus groups of people hating on their pizza. They showed the cheese sticking to the box.
Yep.
And just imagine for 1 sec. I mean, the NFL playoffs. So somewhere in the Midwest is a very drunk franchisee owner, right?
Oh, yeah.
5 beers in. He
Screaming
went to
at
Beer
his TV
Fest.
at this point.
He went to Beer Fest. Right, exactly. And this commercial runs, and that he's like, you just spent our own money to tell the world our pizza sucked. And the CMO, who's now the president, which tells you that this obviously worked out.
Yeah.
Right? Taking risks works out. He said he got some pretty tough phone calls in the first week, and then they were 2 days from running out of pepperoni. And so if they would have been more prepared, he thinks they would have even jumped up more points. So you take a company that was 3 years of negative sales, stock price under $3.
Wow.
And today the stock price is over $400.
Holy
Return on courage,
moly.
and it's cheese sauce and dough. That's all it is. So again, don't tell me that a boring category. If cheese sauce and dough. By the way, if I could have been there the day that someone put those three ingredients together, I would have paid a lot of money for that to be there on that day.
Yeah. Now, isn't Domino's is kind of even sort of pivoting a little bit now into like this kind of tech company kind of thing too, because they've got now the commercials are all about like the drone delivery, like the little driving drones that deliver the pizza to your house now.
Well, they were the one that was the first courageous thing, was the whole delivery thing back in the
30
day.
minutes.
That was
or
like long
less.
time ago. Yeah.
So but again, think about it. So let's go back to the whole strategy talk. Congratulations! In the 31st minute, your shitty pizza arrives and it's free.
Yeah.
That was what that was the message.
Right.
So they were playing in the value space, not the quality space.
Right.
And to Matt's point now, it's like they see themselves not as a pizza company, but as a tech company.
Yeah, well, that's your point. I heard you say it on another podcast.
Okay. There you go.
Take it. You should take it.
You had your chance, Matt.
Got to give credit where credit's due.
All right.
So again, that's a shift. That's
Yeah.
a big it's a big shift. And imagine trying to communicate that to 30,000 employees that the investments we're going to make are about advancing the tech side of the business.
I got to see some of those commercials. I don't see enough commercials to keep
Yeah.
up with what Domino's is doing these days.
That's true.
I don't think you're alone, and I think that's
I know.
again
Yeah.
we're back to why it's content. It's not advertising anymore.
Yeah. Well, now we live in a YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime world, right? Like cable's kind of slowly going away.
Yeah.
But
and then you have YouTube, premium. If you're and you're just like, nope, bypass all that again.
I pay to not even see ads on YouTube too.
Right.
So.
Brian Burton, just like that. You like that? There was something I just wanted to, because we're running out of time here. I want to mention the passion project you're working on, because right before your last question, you mentioned how like it's like the best possible thing to be making money doing something you absolutely love, and the project you're working on right now seems like that in a nutshell, like perfect.
Yeah, it is. So the last 18 months, I've had the honor of working with Landon Donovan on his memoir. If you asked me to if you could do anything, what would you do? It would be the intersection of sports and stories. And so the fact that the universe for some reason allowed this to fall into my lap is amazing, and it's also a testament too, like that everything really does lead to the next thing. So like if I was in New York City for a long time and thought I was coming out here to write movies, not live one, and like the next thing you know, it's chaos and stubbornness is what starts my first company. Survive that, merger with the PR and social media company. That leads to my first to Return on Courage, the book. Then that book, Landon reads that book. It's a very different book, but he likes the book. I'm hired by the San Diego Loyal to help them set the values. We have an offsite. I'm like, hey, would you ever come on my podcast? He comes on my podcast. One thing leads to the next. And so now, like I said, it's been a little over 18 months. I got about 70 hours worth of footage of interviews. Everybody from Landon to Bruce Arena, Tim Howard, Michael Bradley, obviously his family. Just really trying to honor who he is as a human. And people always said to me, and I'm so skeptical, maybe as a creature, but like he's an amazing soccer player and a better human. And you're like, yeah, right. And then you get a chance to sit with him. And I don't think I'm giving anything away here, but like Landon made a very specific choice when he realized if I could commit myself to being a world-class athlete, I can commit myself to being a world-class human. And it's sort of the choices that he eventually made when he finally realized it was a choice. And the book will come out during World Cup, so we got still a year and 4 months away, and please USA make it, because it's in Qatar also, and it's like 1,000 degrees there.
Oh yeah.
They've moved the World Cup to end of November, so I imagine we'll launch the book right around like Cyber Monday is what we're thinking.
2022, I guess.
2022. Yeah.
Right on, man.
And then my life is still crazy because I want the Audible to be different than the book itself, because I've got all these amazing interviews. So I want to.
Dude, how cool! A book who is it? Running the Navy SEAL, the book that we both
Goggins.
read. Goggins, yeah, his audio book. I'm sure you've heard it, or I'm sure you read the book, but he had the co-author with Goggins, and it was like probably triple the length of the book, but it was like the most interesting thing because it was just like, hold on, pause the book, we got to dive deep into this story, bro. You know, it's like if you guys pull something like that off, that could be interesting.
Well, that is the plan. And
Nice.
and again, I mean, there's some shit that's said from some of his teammates about some of his stories that are just they're fascinating. It's just I'm not selling the book. I mean, it's like I said, I was surprised. Like when he was like, "Oh, I have a story," I'm like, "I'm going to be writing about soccer for the next," and I love soccer, great. But then to see, you know, should any 17-year-old human be living by himself in a foreign country, you know, like doesn't know the language, you know, like having to figure that out, you know, with a GED, and like that's basically what Landon was. Like his parents didn't move there; he was by himself.
All right, let's keep it there. I do want to ask more questions, but we have no more time, and you can't talk about it. So that's okay.
I mean, if you're open
Dude,
to it, I would
wait.
love to do a round 2 at some point because, I mean, I feel like there's so many more rabbit holes we could have gone down, and yeah, you're just so fun to talk to. So.
So right, where you have a million places online that are just fascinating. Like I'm looking at the Courageous podcast right here, and you have just rock stars on there. But give us the lineup of where people should check you out.
I go to ericberman.com. That's No.
He's gonna get so much love from this one.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, I think it depends on who you are, right? So, like, if you're running a company and you want more out of the mentality of the business, I would go to couragebrands.com. Or if you're like, you know what, I want to make sure I really trust the way this person thinks, then I'd go to returnoncourage.com and I'd grab the book. And I didn't see that coming, but like the book is such an easy way to be like, you know what, read the book. If you like the book, let's work together. If you don't, I'm the wrong guy. And if you need a keynote speaker, probably ryanberman.com. Like if you need someone to like maybe kick your team in the teeth with a smile, and because in some ways I'm just sharing what I learned from Apple and Google and Amazon and all those guys, and it's like I am sort of fascinated by how the largest companies on the planet are also the most agile. You think it'd be the little guy. So a lot of this is it's like giving them the tools they need to move faster, and that's in a crazy way that is courage.
Oh yeah, it is. All right, my man. Well, this has been very interesting. And the book, I read the book 2 years ago or something. I think it was like right when we got connected or something like that. But yeah, it's a deep dive on all these. We didn't touch on a lot of them. You have all these different principles around courage and cool stories. So dive in. It's an easy read, and it's a lot of different insights you're not going to get from us. So doing the direct marketing thing all the time. So appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you at Beer Fest. Okay.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Craft.